Welcome back to the channel, guys. It looks like the next balance patch has dropped for Kill Team. Let's check it out. So the core rules kind of open with a change to the way severe works, and you basically can no longer severe into rending. So it becomes a little bit less sort of like a stacked guarantee. We've also seen some changes to the way Gallowdark works. It's asked for a little bit of an appendix on the guard rule. Basically, if you go on guard and successfully guard, that friendly operative cannot counteract during that turning point. I think this is obviously intended to stop the sort of double guarding that's been going on. We've also got a little bit of a weird sort of clarification in the rules commentary here, where it says a dice can only be retained once. I don't know if people were arguing if they had two ways to retain a dice, that die would then sort of magically become two separately retained dice, like a normal and a critical. It sounds a little bit weird and janky, but obviously they've clarified that you can only retain a dice once. This is one of those kind of rules that probably doesn't need to be clarified. Obviously, one die cannot become two die. So the changes to the Heirotek Circle are mainly aimed at the Chronomancer's time splinter action. Basically, what it boils down to is the comms device only affects the initial range of the time splinter action. So where you're pulling, you're pulling your Necron warriors from. It doesn't actually buff the second measurement, so you can pull a Necron from 10 inches away, but you can't teleport them out 10 inches. You can only teleport them 5 inches. And I think a running theme in this kind of update is the reining in of alpha strikes, because here we can see, we can see that the time splinter action cannot be used now in the first turn. As we go forward through the update, you'll see other factions like the Brew Brothers with their pervasive rule and so on have also had that initial alpha strike sort of potential, really toned down. So the big one, and one I think a lot of people will be looking for, will be the Sanctifiers update log. So here we see the lead the procession rule has been heavily nerfed. It cannot move more than 3 inches now. So we used to get a full reposition, it looks like, but now each operative cannot move more than 3 inches and must end that move in the location where they are still benefiting from the sermon. So I think we've essentially gone from what is a free reposition action wholesale to a free dash action team-wide. Still really strong, but definitely a big hit to the team. Hopefully they'll be less sort of demonized now and played a bit more sort of wholesale, but I do worry that the team is kind of maintaining crazy buffs across the board. We'll see how it plays out. So the second part of the Sanctifiers nerf is essentially bringing it in line with the other icons in this balance patch. So this is also happening with the Brew Brothers as well, where it's basically saying once per turning point, a friendly Sanctifier operative is incapacitated while visible and within 6 operatives. So you can no longer hide him inside a stronghold whilst giving out this buff, allowing your Sanctifiers to shoot on death and things like that. And it looks like Blaze has been sort of toned down as well, so you now actually have to get a critical success and inflict the damage. So it used to be the case that even if your opponent saved everything and no damage went through, they got the Blaze debuff on them, but that's no longer the case. I think this is also being applied to the Sisters Blaze as well, and I think it will tone them down a little bit. Is it going to be enough? Well, we'll see. So Nemesis Claw have had a bit of a nerf here, it seems. So in Midnight, Clade now is dropped to 8 inches. That's not terrible, really, because I mean, if an enemy's within 8 inches anyway, they're within charge range. I don't think it's it's a huge nerf, really, in that regard. But I do think the visionary operative nerf is a little bit more impactful. So at the end of each turning point, discard your prescience points, so you can no longer stack your prescience points for horrendous rolls or anything like that. You got to spend them within the turn. I do think it'll make it will really punish the reliability of the faction. I think one of the things that Nemclaw had going for them is if they had a really bad run of rolls after not having to spend the prescience tokens, they could make up for that. They could they could equalise the luck, I suppose, across turns. They've also had the Straploid Return to Darkness nerfed a little bit, so it cannot move more than 4 inches during that action. So they can no longer basically make a full reposition or dash action to get away. They've got a kind of limited range on how far they can fall back with the Return to Darkness ploy. Again, I definitely think the prescience nerf is the biggest change for them, and the most impactful. Okay, so next we got Phobos, and it just looks like a sort of small nerf to the Deadly Shots ploy. So I think it's kind of bringing it in line with the AOD tactical and assault one, where they've kind of got to pick a range. They don't just get balance flat now across the board. So if someone closes the distance, they're less reliable. I don't think this is really a massive nerf to Phobos. I think they got off lightly personally here. So moving on to a Novitiates, it looks like the Blazing Inferno strat ploy has been brought in line with the basically the blaze effect of the Sanctifiers. Again, now they have to basically cause damage in order for the blaze effect to come into play. Here we've got some changes to Pathfinders as well. So the Recon Sweep can no longer be used in the first turning point. This is pretty big, because obviously Pathfinders would like to move up and double shoot with their gun drones. This is kind of, again, indicative of the general shape of Alpha Strikes within Kill Team. It definitely feels like the turning point 1 is trying to be maintained as mostly a setting up turning point as opposed to Alpha Striking, stuff like that. I think it's fair anyway, and it's in line with the other nerfs at Alpha Strikes that have been basically present in the rest of the patch. And the grab inhibitors also had a little bit of clean up on its rules whenever an operative performs an action in which it moves, excluding dash. So it no longer affects dashes, which is, I guess is good for the health of the game, because a 1-inch dash is pretty pathetic, isn't it? It kind of defeats the point of even taking the action, so fair. So I think the biggest winner from this balance patch has been the Breachers. The Void Jammer and the Geist Skull weapon have gone from lethal 5 to lethal 4. The Sergeant's got 9 wounds now, Endurance got 11, and the rest of the team's got 8. So it looks like as a baseline, the Imperial Navy Breachers are now getting 8 wounds, which obviously is massive for breakpoints and stuff like that. We'll see if it's enough for them. I think they're a very sort of underperforming team at the moment, and maybe this will be sort of the shot in the arm they need to see some play, hopefully. Okay, so next up we've got Hunter Clade, and this time we've kind of got some minor changes. I mean, team selection wise, they haven't got an extra operative here. Kind of, you could be forgiven for thinking that, but they have got access to another Rust Stalker operative, and they are the kind of better sort of standout operatives on the team. So they can now take 7 of those instead of 6. And then the Firefight Ploy Omniscience Imperative basically no longer damages your units when it's being used. So it's took away some of the negatives for one of the imperatives and give you access to another, sort of stronger unit. I'm not sure it's exactly going to be world changing for the Hunter Clade, but at least some attempt at change is being made, even though they are a team that's going to be declassified very soon. So we've got a couple of changes to the Legionary special rules next. Fickle Fates no longer gives you ceaseless. Fickle Fates no longer gives you relentless. It now gives you balanced, basically. Looks like the Corn stratagems now max out at 7 wounds, I believe. It was 8 previously. And then obviously the strat ploys for Implacable have also changed. So it looks like Implacable basically no longer just minuses piercing. It just basically makes piercing weapons have piercing crits instead. What this means is they still have a chance to get the piercing off. It's definitely not as good as it used to be, obviously, because they used to be able to ignore piercing altogether with all of the piercing 1 weapons like plasma guns and stuff like that. So definitely a nerf to the Nurgle keyword specifically. Okay, so some changes to Chaos Cults here. The big one is probably a nerf to the Barbed, the Cursed Gift. Basically, it only applies the first time you strike instead of every time you strike it now. So pretty significant nerf. Still very good, but you can't just spam out, barbed strikes over and over anymore. So the Scout Squad have kind of received a little bit of a buff, I think. So use this fireplate ploy when a friendly Scout Squad performs the shoot or fight action. If it's the first friendly operative to perform either of those actions during the first turning point, or if the enemy operative in that action has a higher wound stat than that scout, you can retain 1 of your normal successes as a critical success instead. How has that changed from... Okay, so I think the Scout Squads have basically just had a little bit of the language on the emboldened aspirant cleaned up. I think it's still very, very wordy and sort of weirdly contextual ploy. Doesn't need to be that wordy. If there's that many words in a ploy, change the ploy. Jesus. So a couple of changes here to Warp Coven. Basically, sorcerers have had their co-peshers drop down to 4 attacks from 5, I believe, off memory. But they have been given the balanced rule, as a little pick-me-up. Not that sorcerers need a little pick-me-up, but there we are. And then Stratploy, the Brotherhood of Sorcerers, basically you can no longer upgrade balanced to ceaseless. You're just given balanced out. Now we've got quite a substantial change to Brood Brothers here. So Insidious can no longer be used in the first turning point. Basically stops you from alpha striking, especially with the Sapper or the Melter Gun. Pretty significant, but it is in line with the rest of the nerfs to alpha strikes that are coming through in this patch. The Icon Ward, again, just like the Sanctifiers, Icon Ward now needs line of sight, so you can't just hide them in the bottom of a bunker or anything like that. Biggest nerf, I think, is the Magus. So basically, the Magus now has to pick 1 of their special rules instead of just having all 3 of them up. Still global, so still very strong, but now the team can only be immune to crits or immune to injury or immune to APL modifiers and so on. It can't just have all 3 of the buffs up all at once. So I think a fair nerf here, but the Primus kind of definitely just got caught in the crossfire. So you cannot select each option more than once per battle. So basically, the initiative manipulation the Primus gives you only comes off once per battle, per ability. Now, I don't think he needed that. I don't think the Primus or the Patriarch really see half as much play as the Magus, and they kind of just got caught up in the crossfire here. So the Angels of Death have taken a pretty significant hit here. So first of all, the chapter tactic Dueler has been changed. It no longer parries out twice. It no longer double dips on the parry. Instead, it looks like you can just block a critical success with a normal strike. It's still strong, unless they have brutal. So obviously it doesn't get around the brutal keyword. But you can only now block a critical with a normal as opposed to blocking 2 attacks, which will change the economy of fighting significantly for the Angels of Death. So now we've also seen some nerfs to the 2 sergeants. So the assault sergeant and the normal sergeant can only use their doctrine warfare abilities once per battle. So you're only going to get your 0 CP Devastator or your 0 CP tactical doctrine once per round for free. It's, I'll be honest with you, that doesn't seem too bad, to be fair, because when you need it, it's usually going to be turning point 2 anyway. So then turning point 3 will come along, but you can no longer just keep spamming, the same doctrine for free each turn. I think kind of definitely with Dueler, that one was overdue. I'm not too sure about the sergeants, but there we are. And it looks like they've given the heavy intercessor a small buff to their movement, so they've now got a 5-inch move, which I feel like probably has more to do with like balancing the Death Watch. Maybe the Death Watch and heavy intercessors have got a 5-inch move, and they're basically bringing the AOD intercessor in line with the potential release of the Death Watch. So moving on to Goremongers next, and it looks like they've kind of had a bit of a light touch. I think they'll. I don't think anything significant is going to change about their playstyle, but basically 2 of their rules have been brought in line with the rules for the rest of every other kill team. So Sanguivitae Rejuvenate, basically their medic rule now just does medic healing, so D3 plus 1 instead of I think it was 2D3 last time, which is crazy. And then the impending Apotheosis rule, basically they're just a scratch. It's just now the same as everybody else, it's just a scratch. You can't block crits with it. So basically their rules have just been brought in line with the rest of the equivalent rules in kill teams. Okay, so we've seen a pretty significant nerf, I think, to Plague Marines here. So essentially the contagion rule used to always work within control range, so they were always anti-melee all the time. Now it looks like it's only going to work as per the normal rules of contagion, and it's only going to work on poisoned enemies. You're kind of going to have to work for it a little bit more. You can't just yomp it up to the to your objective and hope for the best against melee teams. I think it's going to give melee teams a bit of a chance. Right now, I think Plague Marines are just such a roadblock for melee teams that now the fact that the Marines, the Plague Boys, are going to have to throw out poison tokens first will give the pure melee teams some level of interactivity, I suppose. But yeah, hope you found this little summary of the changes useful. I'll try and put some thoughts together on the weekend about the winners and losers from the patch, but in summary, I think really breaches the big winners. I think Sanctifiers have taken a significant hit to their mobility, but they might still have some other areas on the team that need looking at further down the line. However, I'm looking forward to seeing them more in play without having that kind of stigma attached to them. Cheers. If you can, like and subscribe. I'm only a small channel. Every little bit helps. Cheers. Thanks for your time.